The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 96, with Mike Bentley from Blast Motion.
But we knew we had to kind of go back to where we were with KVAS and say, how do we get these sensors small enough? How do we get rid of the laptop computer and to get this into everyone's hands?
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast this week, where we have an incredible guest by the name of Mike Bentley. Mike is one of the greatest biomechanists in the game of golf, and his contributions to collecting data and developing systems that really allow us to analyze what the body's doing, what the club's doing. Mike has had a huge part in a lot of the different pieces of technology that you very well may know, including things like K-Vest, or we're going to talk a lot about his new company, Blast Motion, which is a sensor that goes on the top of your club. So Mike has really been a huge factor in developing some of these things where we can analyze the body, we can analyze forces, we can analyze what the club is doing in golf, and then also just in other sports in general. But wanted to bring Mike on because I've been told that Mike knows the body and knows the golf swing and knows this technology better than anyone in the game. And so I wanted to talk to him about, where that all came from. First, how he developed this passion. He was a big lover of golf from basically the time that he could walk, and then just where the passion for the biomechanics side came in. And so he'll tell a little bit of his story there. But then also, what do we do with this data, and how does his new piece of technology, Blast Motion, which is a sensor that goes on the top of your club and also connects with video, which is amazing because I've never seen the two of these like this, and there may be other things out there, but this is the coolest thing that I've seen when it comes to having video capture and relating it directly to what's going on with your club. And so I've heard a lot of great things about Blast and the people that are involved with it. So wanted to bring this to you to kind of give you some more information, and then also just kind of give a little insight into the world of the biomechanics side, and how do we take all this data that we're using? What are the things that we should be looking at? What are the things that maybe aren't necessarily as important as some people may think? And how do we, the regular golfer, then take this out to the range or the putting green and actually utilize the information there? So Mike really kind of breaks it down, where it all came from, how it's all developed, and then how we can use this in real time with real live feedback to kind of tie together both the feel side of golf with the data collection side of golf, because it seems like they're kind of two separate ends of the spectrum, but I feel like they're doing a great job of kind of bringing these two together. So let's bring in Mike. Mike, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. First thing I want to ask is, given the world of golf and you being a biomechanics specialist, is there a person or a book or an experience or something in your past that has really kind of influenced you and led you in this direction of where you've gone with your career?
Yeah, it's been a bunch of mentors. I just had a very, very lucky to have a lot of great mentors around and just kind of guide me along the way. I kind of start way back with, mom and dad and grandfather. My grandfather was an engineer and a mechanic, and really got me started since the time I was crawling, all about mechanics. So I learned that on, really early on. Got into racing, motocross. So I got into racing when I was 9. Really got the bug pretty hard, and we traveled all over and did that till I was about 18 years old. And that was really kind of the start of the mechanics and learning all about motors and mechanics and engineering and how I could move. And then, in the racing world, you really have a team around you. So my grandfather, my brother, and the whole family, we would travel week to week all over the country and learn just really how to move more efficiently, how to race at a higher level. And that was the early beginnings. And then really as I got into golf, my father was a PGA golf professional. So I kind of had the engineering world as well as the sports world. And I was able to play golf at a pretty high level, where I could play into college and then at the professional level, and then was lucky enough to travel all over the world. So those were kind of the early years. And along the way, I had some really great mentors that taught me a lot about all the different disciplines of how to perform at a new level.
What's the first thing that you and your grandpa built together?
A go-kart. So it goes way, way, way back. So the go-kart was really the kind of the first thing. And, I was tearing apart carburetors as soon as I could crawl. And my brother was 3 years older than I am, very mechanically inclined, a great engineer, and taught me a ton. So that was really the kind of the first stuff of building something together, really as a family, as a team. And from there, I was hooked.
And then, so tell me, you said your dad was a PGA professional. So did he work with you as a youngster, kind of giving you lessons and taking you out to the course? And what are some of the best memories you have of those days?
Yeah, so we had a golf club. My brother and I both had golf clubs in our hands, as soon as we could start crawling. So we had the local golf course, Little Knolls Golf Course in Napa Valley. We were on that, and, Mom and Dad would drop us off at the golf course, and we'd just go out there all day long and play for peanuts and Cokes. So that was the early days. And my brother was a great golfer. Myself, I played okay. And that was a great, he pushed me a lot. So it was really awesome to be able to play with the older guys. You want to hang out with the older kids, and it allowed me to go to the next level.
So as a kid, I think this is kind of interesting to weave in because of your background in biomechanics and everything that you're involved in now, which, there's so much data and different pieces of equipment that we use. When you were a kid, obviously a lot of that stuff wasn't around. None of it was around. What do you see as big differences from the days when you were, a kid going out and just playing to now where you're in this data world where everything is recorded and we've got all this information?
Yeah, so it really starts at the speed shop. So I said, my grandfather, we had at a shop. So back then, even the early 70s, we were measuring, the best we could. Video was really 8mm back then, but we were watching the way the suspension worked. We learned how you moved out on the track. So we were analyzing, and the way you look at the track, the way you analyze your performance before and after, the way the mechanics were looking at the motor, the suspension. And as you were able to move yourself up at the ranks, then you had different expertise from the different factories. So you were lucky enough to have the factory mechanics come in and help you, so you could really understand what was going on. So then into the golf world, you're kind of left out there by yourself, and here's a VHS camera. That was state of the art. So I knew there was more to it. How do we measure? How do we learn more? And was really kind of lucky. I was moving myself down to Southern Cal. I was in the desert. And Dr. Marilyn Pink, who ran the Centinela Hospital Biomechanics Lab, was looking for athletes to come in and start making some swings. So myself, Tom Kite, many others went through that lab, and that's where I really got the hook of, okay, there is a way to measure the body just like we were measuring the motor.
Wow. And you played on tour for how many years?
Yeah, so I on and off just, scuttled around Nike tour anywhere I could. I was playing in Australia, played in Asia, and then played the mini tours and just scraped it around. Mm-hmm. And it was always a question of how I could move. And I watched, other athletes around me. Certain guys could really hit it a long way. Certain guys were phenomenal at the short game. And then why? So it's, what am I should be training on? How do I get more efficient? So it was that kind of mentality of, okay, you go race. As soon as you get done racing, you analyze.
Right.
And then you go out and you race again and you analyze. You race again and you analyze, and you're done for the week. In the golf world, we didn't do that. So how do we go out and perform and analyze? We didn't study game films. That was unusual. So that's what I was always kind of around. So then I just applied that into golf, and then knew that there were some pretty smart people out there, and was lucky enough to surround myself with some great mentors, and just kind of molded what we have today.
If you could, Mike, could you kind of explain to the audience kind of define what is a biomechanist, and kind of, we've touched on it a little bit, but what's their role in golf, and how has that kind of grown over the past several decades, several years?
Right. So, when I was in school, there really wasn't everyone was physical ed. So that was kind of there wasn't the technology that like what we have today. So we're just learning as we are today. We're just still learning how the body learns, how the brain works. So it's really an engineer studying human or studying anything in a living organism. So that's really the engineering or the mechanics. So one side of it is the mechanics, and the other side is learning the living organism. So we were specifically looking at the way the body moves, the human body moves, and understanding the forces that cause that motion. So then we can train the athletes how to perform more efficiently, eliminate injury, artificial limbs, whatever it is. So those engineers can really help the way the body learns and help the coaches coach the athletes how to learn more efficiently.
And you've got quite a background, and if the listeners don't know, you've been a big part in developing a lot of the different technology that's out there. And if you could give us a little bit more background on, the K-Vest. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about blast motion, which is, I haven't seen it in person, but it sounds amazing. And the people that I've talked to about it tell me such great things. And I've seen, obviously, Brad Faxon and Jeff Sluman talking about it. But if you could, give us a little background on where K-Vest came from. And for those that may not know what K-Vest is, what that does and the intention behind starting that and how this has kind of all grown.
Yeah, so it really kind of started as I was hanging out at the Centinela Hospital. It was then we have seen all this great technology, but now how do we get this out to the golf course? So that was really the early 80s of learning how can we measure and then how can we take it outside the lab. So back then it was all 16 millimeter film. It took weeks to put the data together. We would manually digitize every single frame up on the wall. Wow. And that's the way we did it. So, again, coming back from the racing world, we can analyze the performance of a motor very quickly. So why can we not measure the human body more efficiently? And that was really the early stages of, okay, how do we do this? So again, a lot of it is luck. A lot of it is hard work. A lot of it is some great mentors along the way. So back in the early 90s, I was at the mini tours. I was playing down on the Coca-Cola tour and met Chris Welch, who was at Human Performance Technologies. And he was using a video-based system that allowed us to go out on the golf course and measure a swing, and then we would manually digitize that data. So now we went from taking a long period of time to now we could do it in 48 hours or within a week. And that was like, okay, now we have the ability to do this. But it still took a long time to get the feedback to those individuals. So that was back in the early 90s, and then we moved. I had the opportunity to build my own lab up in Ludlow, Vermont with Jim Remy, and then we brought in electromagnetic technologies. So we could put a sensor on the pelvis, we put a sensor on the thorax, and we can move, and we could see that data in real time. So we brought in the big tube television up on the wall. And that was state of the art. So we had this 5,000 square feet indoor studio that was just phenomenal. And Jim just allowed us to really build what we needed. And then we worked with Novell. So we had the first in-shoe pressure system so we could see the amount of pressure being placed throughout the foot. And then we tracked, with Swing Dynamics, we tracked the ball. So we kind of had, here's the data from the ground. Here's the data on the body. And then we ran EEG, so we ran information coming from the brain, and then we tracked the ball. So we kind of had hodgepodge this whole system together of being able to track what the golfer can do. The problem still was you're inside the lab.
Right.
So now...
Were they wired up, or how is this all connected?
Yeah, so electromagnetic was all wired. So, it was different. So we had athletes from all over the world flying in and coming and experiencing it, which was phenomenal. And being up at a chemo in the wintertime, it's in Vermont, so there's snow everywhere. But what was really cool is we had all these different athletes from all these different worlds coming in, snowboarders, skiers, whatever it was, as well as golfers and baseball players would come through the lab, and we'd collect this data and just keep learning. And
so you had snowboarders, you had basically all kinds of different athletes that were testing this stuff too. So this wasn't just golf. This was, you were just looking at the body and trying to figure out ways to kind of capture different pieces of motion.
Yeah, I just kept learning, just kept grabbing data. And, how does a world-class snowboarder compare to a world-class golfer? And most people look at it as well as we did, like there's no correlation. But what's very interesting is the way a snowboarder is going to jump and rotate is exactly the same a golfer is going to rotate. So it was amazing to us to see those patterns. And again, how does a snowboarder push against the ground and move his center of mass against the ground? And then how does a golfer move against the ground, or a world-class baseball player move against the ground? So again, we were collecting all this data and just learning a ton. And along the way, we just kind of met some great mentors out there, and they just kept helping us learn and push it to the next level.
That's cool. It's like you were touching every piece of data that you could get. You get the force plates, which we see a lot now, with body tracks and catalysts. You had the EEGs on the brain, which, we see the different things like the Muse and the focus band and those kinds of things. So you guys were kind of tackling all of this way before, obviously we're it's really starting to kind of become more mainstream now, but this was way back when nobody was probably doing this stuff. Then how did this all, I imagine this is what then fed into the creation of what's now the K-Vest.
Yeah, so Jim Remy allowed us to build this great lab, and then we ran Golf Academy there, and we had golf students come through. So, we were guilty of putting tons of golfers asleep. So we would grab all this data in the lab, and we move them into the studio, and we'd show them on the television what we were collecting, and we had all the squiggly lines and all the fun data, and we put everyone right to sleep. So we had all this information, but as soon as we brought in the video, everyone would wake up and go, "Oh, I understand how I move." So we knew then I got this 3D data, which is really the DNA of how you move, but I need to be able to communicate with video. So that's really now I got to bring these two worlds together so the athletes and the coaches can understand. So as we had students come from all over the world go through the system, we were lucky enough to have some great guys down from the New Hampshire area come through it and said, this is really great stuff. We need to get this wirelessly. So we need to get it outside the lab and be able to put it out on the golf course or in the baseball field or whatever it is. And that was really the inception of K-Vest. So K-Vest was the first wireless sensor that we could place on the body.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And that was early 2000.
And then kind of explain to us what blast is then, because blast is kind of now a way to not measure the body, but measure more of what the club's doing and connect that immediately to your video, correct?
Right. So along the way, I met Ryan Capps. So Ryan Capps had his own studio agency in Arizona, and he was working with Mark Verstegen. So Mark Verstegen and Ryan grew up together. And I saw, this was when websites were very early. I saw this just, beautiful website and learned a lot about what Mark was doing and worked with IMG and kind of interacted with some of those athletes. So we saw this and it's like, he really understands how to communicate this message. So we knew we had the data, but the problem was how do we communicate? So Ryan is just a magician on the communication side. So I worked together with Ryan as we built K-Vest. And then as we moved along from K-Vest, which we had, the first inertial sensor, but it was 60 grams. It was the size of a GoPro camera, which was great for the pelvis or the thorax. But as soon as you put it on the hands, now the golfer didn't like it. It was too heavy. It was too big. Couldn't put it on a golf club. So we knew that, okay, we captured all this data on the body, but we're really not capturing it from the handle to the head of the golf club. We can capture the ball, but we need to be able to capture this. So we worked with Vicon, and that was really the beginnings of what is called INZO, and that's understanding how the golf club moves in space. So we worked together with Vicon and created an optical system, which is our optical cameras that go around the golfer, and then you put these little markers on the golfer, on the golf ball, on the golf club, and you can watch it move in 3D space, which we see in the movies today. You see the little reflective markers as the athletes are building Avatar or whatever the movie is.
Right.
So that was the inception of INZO. So we worked with Fujikura, who was very interested in looking at the deflections of the shaft. So we've been looking at that as well as looking at the body. So we kind of started this kind of world of let's collect the body, let's collect the golf club, let's collect the ball, which was great, but it was indoors. We were able to do a little bit of it outdoors as we kept advancing the Vicon cameras, but we knew we had to kind of go back to where we were with K-Vest and say, how do we get these sensors small enough? How do we get rid of the laptop computer and to get this into everyone's hands? So K-Vest is still a phenomenal product, but it's really focused on the professional So it's really the prosumer and not the consumer.
Right.
We wanted to go out and how do we change the world? How do we help the athletes? And that's to get it small enough. So as Ryan and I were working with the different OEMs, helping them with their labs, we came across Michael Fitzpatrick. And Michael has been one of the founders out there in all the different types of technology. So he's very successful at growing businesses. And Michael was a diehard golfer and really getting into golf heavy. So we came across Michael. It's just a little over 6 years now. And we said, we really want to push this inertial technology along with the video. So Michael got very interested and really helped Ryan and I formulate Blast and take the Blast where it is today.
Can you describe what the sensor looks like and what it entails for the consumer? Like when they get the box and where can they get it too? But what does it look like and how does it all work?
Yeah, so it's an inertial sensor, which is a sensor that measures motion. So it measures the rotational motion or the linear motion. It's about the size of a quarter, so it's very small. It weighs 7 grams, so it's very lightweight. And we manufacture Blast ourselves. So we kind of started from scratch and said, okay, what's the best way of building an inertial sensor that we possibly can? So we learned what we learned at KVAS of building this tactical grade or military grade sensor, which is extremely accurate and very durable. But the problem was it was very expensive to manufacture. So working with Michael, and then Michael brought in Roger Weingarth, who's our president, who has a background of, again, scaling companies and really understanding the manufacturing. So we took this whole manufacturing process and made it more hands-off, so we can do very, very high volume, but still have that tactical military grade product. So we're able to measure at a very high level of accuracy of what this sensor is moving in space. So if I put it on an athlete, I can put it on his golf club. And it doesn't weigh anything, so the golfer can't feel it. And it's very small, so he really forgets it's even there. So now I can put it on a golfer. He can move around all he wants. He can track that information, and it's all stored on that sensor itself. So the sensor can kind of run in its own project. Programmers is out there collecting that data. But then as soon as it wants to communicate, it can communicate directly to an iOS device or an Android device. And it will take that information from the sensor and then transfer it over to the device. And now I can visualize it. So I can see what my metrics are, what I'm moving around, what my timing is. And then now with the new devices that are out there that are so powerful, so back in the early 2000s, the phone now has more processing power than we had back on our desktop computers.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's just amazing, right? And now what's, especially on the iOS devices they've done with the video cameras, it's just unbelievable. So we have high definition video at 240 frames. And then we're able to synchronize that video, which people understand, with the 3D data, which they learn. So now I can bring those two worlds together, and then the 3-year-old can understand what I'm doing.
So you can literally take video of yourself with your swing, with the Blast device, the sensor on top of your club, and it automatically syncs. So then you get your reading of your different stats, whatever you're looking at. But then it's also totally synced up with the video?
Yeah, and it does it all by itself. So again, as a coach, in the early days, it would take us so long to collect the data. And then we had to analyze that information. And then we had to take that information and then create a prescription tree of, okay, here's what the athlete is doing and understanding how the body learns. So I need to stress the central nervous system this way. So all that took so much time, and now your phone puts it all together for you, so you have your 3D data, your 2D video data, and your prescription of what you need to do to improve all in your hand.
That's amazing.
It is. It's truly amazing.
So what are all the things that it reads for the golfer? Like, say a guy's taking it out to the practice range, and what does a kind of a practice session, if a guy's going out without an instructor, what would it look like for him to set it up, maybe have the video watching him, and then what can he read and what can he look at?
Yeah, so you can set your phone on a tripod, you can set it on the ground, whatever you like, and you can record the video or you can record the 3D data at the same time. So beginner golfer, advanced golfer, really, if they're looking at it for the first time, we always start them out with timing. So that's kind of the way the body creates this DNA, this signature. So if we look at the stroke of putting, so we have a Brad Faxon that will go out and He'll put it on his putter and he'll go out and hit some shots. So he'll just go around the putting green, and he knows that his putt timing, so for every stroke that he hits on the golf course, his timing, his backswing time and his forward swing time should be exactly the same. That allows him to be extremely consistent as he goes out on the putting green, in the hotel room, out on the golf course, in the tournament. So he's able to capture that information. If he wants to look at the video, it's synchronized with that. So he can say, okay, hey, I can see that my head's moving back and forth. My coach told me I need to do this. And then the data backs it up. So it's extremely accurate. And now I'm able to communicate from player to coach, coach to biomechanist, whatever the team is that I'm looking at.
That's amazing. I'm sure you have some great testimonials or stories of any PGA players or anybody else using this that has really seen a lot of improvement and is just kind of like singing its praises.
Yeah, we're very lucky. So we went out on the Champions Tour. Again, I'm in the 50-plus age, so went out there with some players that I knew fairly well and some coaches. And we were just out collecting data. So, what's really happening out there today in the professional world. So we were able to collect that data. We had players like Brad Faxon and Jeff Sluman, some of the others. We have a little over 100 tour players now using the product on a weekly basis.
Wow.
So we're getting lots and lots of data. We have just shy of 100,000 just putting strokes that we can look at. So we know what's going on in the hotel room. So how much are they training in the hotel room? How much are they training on the practice putting green? So we can see all this up in our portal, in our Connect, in real time. So we can see what everyone is practicing, how much they're practicing. And then what the players will do is they'll go out from, let's say a Jeff Sluman will go out and he'll practice for 15 minutes out on the putting green. He knows exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to really fine-tune his timing. So his variance, once it gets down at that level, he wants to get down within 100th of a second. So how does that feel this week? It may feel a little faster, a little slower, but he knows the clock, the timing, is going to be very consistent. So he can count on the device, give him the feedback that he needs to speed it up, slow it down, whatever it is. So if he's playing extremely fast greens or extremely slow greens that week, whatever it is, he knows his timing needs to be the same. That is his signature, and that signature never changes. So it was great, like with Jeff Sluman, he was in the high 50s as far as putting out on the Champions Tour, the point where he was extremely frustrated and didn't really enjoy playing in tournament golf. So we came across, through the help of Brad, we came across Jeff and said, let's just take a look at where you're at. So we found out right away that his timing was very inconsistent from stroke to stroke. So a 2-footer was very different than his timing for a 40-footer. And those two should be the same. So Brad would show him, okay, here's what mine looks like. Not saying you have to be me, but here's the consistency of mine. And I'm a pretty good putter versus the consistency of yours, and you're having trouble. So you can see right away very easily, even at that, most of the Champions Tour players are not really techies. So you need to keep the story extremely simple. Right. So he could see that, wow, I'm really varying my timing. And because I vary my timing, now looks what happens to the mechanics of my stroke. So the path gets very much inside to out and creates a loop. He comes from the outside to in, he's cutting across it, he's opening the face. So his rotations were way out of whack, but it all goes back to the root of timing. So we always look at timing first, then we look at the stroke length, we look at the stroke speed, we look at his acceleration patterns, we look at his rotations, and then we look at all his impact angles. So with a Jeff, his impact angles were all over the place. So of course, from stroke to stroke to stroke, the ball's doing completely different motions.
Wow. So I like the fact that you said, like the Champions Tour guys are not necessarily usually techies, and I would imagine that a lot of the guys listening to this podcast are not necessarily techies. Some may be, but I feel like in this world of data and everything that we can collect and analyze, sometimes it just gets a little bit overwhelming. And so, what would you say is obviously the timing you mentioned of a putting stroke? But for, let's say, a higher handicap golfer, somebody in the 10 to 20 range, what are a couple other suggestions that you would recommend kind of working on and using this for that would be simple, not overwhelming as far as data is concerned?
Yeah, so we would start with timing. So like, with Jeff, he was within 4 to 5 tenths of a second off from stroke to stroke to stroke, and he was 50th in putts gained. So now, as he got down with 100th of a second, he's number one. So to take an athlete at that level to go from 50 to 1 is pretty amazing within a year.
Yeah.
So the same thing happens with the beginner golfer. He's 4, 5, 6 tenths off from stroke to stroke to stroke, but he doesn't have any feedback. So we always kind of look at it and say, well, how do I tell time without a clock? And you can't. So what's the time of my signature? So now that you have this clock that's with you, being the blast sensor, I can see, well, my timing is now the variance is getting tighter. It's getting more consistent. So that's where we always start. And then as we work up through our certified coaches, they help those players understand where to start, which is the timing. And then we say, okay, well, the timing is inconsistent because your posture is inconsistent. You're not able to stabilize this system like a pendulum. So now we can't have consistent timing. So if I'm moving my body back and forth and I'm very unstable, then the pendulum's going to be unstable, so the timing is going to be off.
Right.
So that's where we start. And then we say, all right, now let's work on your posture. Let's get it more stable so your timing is consistent. And now let's look at your stroke length. Does your stroke length measure what it needs to be to hit the ball a certain distance? So if my timing is consistent, is no longer a variable, then I can work on stroke length. If my stroke length matches what I need it to be to hit the ball a certain distance, and again, I'm consistent with it, now I can start to work on stroke speed. But we always, again, work it kind of from the ground up. Timing, speed, and length.
Gotcha. And the sensor can go on any club. Is that correct?
It can, yeah. So the same problems that you see in the putting stroke, you're going to see with the driver. So the guys out there that want to just pound it, from shot to shot to shot, their timing is off. Their length is inconsistent, as well as their speed is inconsistent. And we go back to the same story that we saw in putting, chipping, bunker shots, whatever it is. The posture is inconsistent. So now you have the 3D data coming from the sensor. You can use the 2D video to help you with the mechanics of the body. Of now, here's the way the posture is set up statically. Now let's look at dynamically. So again, all that data is synchronized. So you can see, well, coach said to keep my thorax, my upper body a little bit more stable so it can rotate. And now let's look at my timing. My timing got more consistent. My distance was increased because my speed went at a much higher velocity.
I was watching a video, probably on the Blast Motion website, with Brad talking about, just kind of how he uses it and everything. But he said something I thought was pretty cool, is how he basically uses it almost like a video game. You have your timing, and you're pretty much just trying to see if you can kind of make the last stroke the same as the one before, that kind of thing. And we had Trillium Rose on here on the podcast, I think about a month or two ago, and she was saying how making your practice more gamified is a much better way than just going out and hitting balls or hitting putts. And so it seems like with technology, because I think sometimes, as I mentioned, it can get overwhelming and there can be so much information to take in, but you guys have also found a way to bring in that feel side of it too, because it seems like some people tend to be on the way far edge of, they want all the information, they want all the data, they want all the stats, and then some people, like your Bubba Watson or whatever, they're kind of more on the feel side category, and it's almost like you're kind of bridging the gap between the two, because you've got the device that gives you the feedback, but you're also working on, okay, how did that feel, how did that look?
Yeah, and that's the fun of the game. So the game is the immediate feedback. So the faster I can get the feedback to the athlete, the faster he can learn and move that pattern, change the pattern of how he is. So you take a Bubba Watson, you take a Freddie Couples, you take a Brad Faxon. If you listen to Brad talk about putting, it's extremely simple. So it is a video game to them. So they make a stroke and say, okay, I'm trying to keep it, let's say 0.6 seconds on my backstroke and 0.3 seconds on my downstroke. I want that every time. So now I got that 3-footer downhill slider. How did I do? Now I have the 40-footer uphill. How did I do? So they know where they need to work towards, and then every single day they keep working on it, and they keep very consistent. And then you have individuals like a Jeff Sluman or some of the LPGA players that are using the product, they get extremely consistent, and they go to that next level.
That's amazing. Okay, I have a couple questions for you. Being the biomechanist, and because there is so much that we can look at these days, we've got TrackMan, we've got the foot plates, we've got all this different stuff. What are some of the other, aside from timing and outside of blast motion, just in general, what are some of the most beneficial or fundamental things that we should be looking at? And then maybe what are some of the things that we see people looking at and analyzing that really they shouldn't be, that don't really matter all that much?
Yeah, you really need to surround yourself with some great individuals, some great professionals. So it's not just the golf coach. The golf coach can understand the technical side. So what do I need from a technique side to allow my body to move in a certain way to hit a golf ball or to make a stroke? But where's that physical therapist? Where's that athletic trainer on my team? Do I have a biomechanist on that team? Do I have a more of a mental coach or someone really understands the motor learning side? Do I have a mechanic on the team that understands how to build that golf club? So we always ask the coaches to surround themselves with other great individuals. So like at Blast, we have 60 plus engineers on our team and some brilliant minds that allows us to push our product to that next level. So we can do what we can do with the professional athletes in baseball or basketball or golf. So it's really understanding what you need to look at. So yes, you have your body, your mass of your body, and you kind of have the center of mass of that body. And how it interacts in golf, we're interacting with the ground. So as I move my center of mass over my feet or base of support, how does that interaction happen? Can I measure how it's moving? So it's really important to understand what the body is doing and how it reacts with the ground. So having force plates or in-shoe pressure system like a PEDAR is extremely important. Swing Catalyst is great. Some of the others of having the pressure and force and understanding how that all works together. But we don't have to use the $10 words. We can kind of really break it really down. And the more we can get it in real time, the less as us as coaches have to talk or communicate to the athlete, the better. So our job is really kind of to zip the mouth closed and watch the athlete interact with the technology in real time, which is just amazing to watch. So there's not a language barrier now. What the athlete is sensing, you can't get inside his mind. He senses this way or that way. But the faster you get that feedback, the faster he's going to learn. So we see that the future is the technology just allows that information to get to the athlete faster in different ways that allows him to learn quicker. So rather than having to read a graph or to read static numbers, we're going to see that more in real time. We'll see the video more in real time. And that's just as the processing power of the phones and the devices get faster, we can give that data to the athlete at a much quicker rate.
Yeah, it's amazing the technology that we do have, and like you said, just how it's changed in 10, 15 years and the capabilities that it has. What are the other sports that you guys are getting into with Blast?
So again, just being a sports junkie and loving the racing world, so we try and place on anything we possibly can. So it's just getting our team to just go out and grab data on all kinds of different athletes. So it's not just in the sports world, but all of us as athletes, as humans standing on the earth. So can we help people get out of a wheelchair? Can we help people move quicker, rehabilitate quicker, whatever the pattern is that we're trying to do? The faster we get the information to the athlete moves even quicker. So we have 80-year-old athletes that are moving, and we would put limitations on them as coaches of, well, we don't think they can do this, so let's just kind of take it easy. And sure enough, we keep proving ourselves wrong, that these athletes are just extremely amazing, and they can do things that we thought we would put limits on.
That's awesome. I've got a young lady, I like to call her, who I work with, and she's 75. And she came in originally because she had a total knee replacement and just wanted to start working with a trainer and, just wanted to get in better shape. And she just, in the most recent Senior Olympics, leg pressed, I think it was 450 pounds. It's like, some of these people will amaze you if you just give them the opportunity to do so. And so it's cool that you guys are kind of getting into that as well, not just the professional end sports, but finding ways to take this technology, which seems and sounds amazing, but to bring it into other worlds and help other people and analyze and give feedback to. So that's very cool.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And, we look at golf as a phenomenal sport, but it's also very therapeutic for different athletes. So you have all these great wounded warriors that are coming over, and we can give them this feedback. And again, we put limits on them. Well, we don't think they can do this, and sure enough, we're proved wrong every time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what the human body can do, and to be able to capture some of that can be so very helpful. All right, Mike, I've got a few kind of closing up questions that I like to ask everybody before we let you go. First and foremost, are you more of a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore guy?
Happy Gilmore.
Any in particular reason why?
I just love the hockey side of it. So, we're big, again, on the hockey side as getting the motion. So we like to look at golf as kind of a hockey downswing and a baseball backswing. So love the way Happy hits the shot.
Awesome. All right, if you could walk 18 holes with anybody, past, present, or future, doesn't necessarily have to be somebody in the world of golf, who would it be? Why would you want that person? And what course would you want to play on?
Definitely be Augusta National, the golf course. Bobby Jones, Ben Hogan. If I could roll back time, it would be Jack Nicklaus in his prime and my father.
Awesome. Excellent. Have you ever played Augusta?
Have not. Walked it a few times, waiting to play it.
Nice. All right. What has you most excited about everything going on with Blast and then any other projects that you have going on right now?
It's fun now to see, what's happening in golf. Baseball, with Major League Baseball, they're very much into the science. They surround themselves with great teams. So seeing what the Houston Astros and all the other teams are now doing with the biomechanics is just really, really cool. Major League Baseball is on. You're just going to see it here this weekend in the Home Run Derby, which is really cool. So it's just taking the level of mechanics and learning to the whole next level, and then now it's mainstream.
All right, I got one last question for you, and this is take your time if you need to, but if you were tasked with the question of, say you have a new golfer, all golf instruction videos, books have been erased. They have no access to that. What are two fundamental things that you would tell that golfer moving forward in their golf journey?
First, I would help them understand how the body learns. Really understand how I learn. And once I understand how I learn, then I can apply the principles of mechanics. So understanding balance, how my body's center of mass interacts with the way I push against the ground, my base of support. Once I understand how the body learns, I understand how the mechanics of balance, then I can start to understand how I can move dynamically, and then having something to give me that real-time feedback.
Excellent. Any last piece of advice for the 18 Strong audience, and then let them know where we can find out more about you and where they can find the Blast Motion device?
Yeah, so they can find out more information about our team and myself at www.blastmotion.com. You're going to see it out there with Major League Baseball. You're seeing it on the PGA Tour, the Champions Tour, the LPGA Tour. So it's out there available today, and you can go out online and download it.
Excellent. Mike, I can't thank you enough for your time, and I just want to say thank you for all of the innovation and all the hard work that you've put in the past, because the things that you're doing really are and have changed the world of golf in the way that we look at what our body's doing. Me more from the physical side, the movement side, and then I know all the golf instructors and golfers that have been using the products that you've had a huge part in creating. All thank you. So I just want to give you that quick acknowledgement and say thanks for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing what's going on with Blast in the future.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate the time. It's been great to get on. And, again, I just can't say thanks enough to all my mentors, and everyone's kind of helped me get to this point. And the future looks pretty good.
Excellent. All right, obviously, if you want any more information on Blast, just go to blastmotion.com or go to 18strong.com to get the show notes of this episode. I'll have all the background there. I'll have all the links that we talked about in the show. You can just search Mike Bentley or just Mike, and you'll find this is episode number 96. Thanks again for joining me this week. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, be sure to do that so you get every new episode as it comes out. It'll be automatically downloaded for you. And of course, if you haven't left a review yet, we would love for you to do that, to let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you like about the show and how we can continue to bring you some of the best information on golf, fitness, training, and simply making you a better human being as well as a better golfer. Thanks again for joining me on the 18 Strong podcast. I'm Jeff Pellizzaro. Train hard, practice smart, play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.